I can probably only take one Limp Bizkit song, and then I don't need another one for a couple months.
I don't know if you're in the minority in that category.
Welcome to Music Musing. Every once in a while, my brother George and I would have these conversations about music. Music is our passion, and it's a huge part of our lives, and we decided to share those conversations with you. So if you love music, sit back and enjoy this podcast.
Okay, welcome back to Music Musing. Got my brother on the line.
How we doing?
Good. Album challenge. Is this part 3? I think this is part 3, right?
Have we done 3 of them? Yeah. Well,
challenge 3.
Yeah. The first one was uncalled for. The second one was realistic, okay. And this is kind of somewhere in the gray area.
Yeah, I think we we did a little bit different this time. We actually gave each other 2 to pick from, which was kind of instrumental in changing what we did before, because the first one, like you said, was kind of,
surprise attack.
It was a joke on your side. It wasn't really a joke on mine, because I really wanted to know how you felt about it.
Oh, there was nothing funny about it. I will swear to that under a court of law. There was nothing funny about that. That was borderline painful. But
the second one was good, because I really got into something that I knew was there, and it was around when I was listening to that type of music at that time. I just hadn't went that heavy, and I think that I threw something at you that has been a staple for me for years. But I think this was kind of the perfect meld, like you said, kind of the gray area where, it was 2 albums that I knew about and that I've listened to on a number of times, and threw them at you, and you did the same thing for me. And, I think both of us were probably semi-aware of which one we were going to pick of the 2.
I actually wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I was, I guess, to be honest, I was hoping for the other, because the one that you picked is, wheelhouse.
Well, actually, before you do that, tell everybody what 2 you picked for me.
I picked, I think I picked Brothers by the Black Keys.
Yep.
And Betty by Helmet.
Yes.
Both of which were, I think the Black Keys might have been the third. I know Betty is the third, but I think Brothers was the third album by the Black Keys, studio album. Second or third. And
Betty was the
third. I know, I'm positive that's the third studio album by Helmet.
Yes, correct.
Brothers was either second or third. Maybe
I'd have to look that one
maybe
up. Maybe
fourth-ish. But either way, you didn't use it anyway. But they were kind of why I chose those 2 are they're very different, but they're very much in my heavy rotation still, and they're, I think, the epitome of what those 2 bands had to offer. Helmet has made the Black Keys have made a lot of great music, in my opinion. And Helmet has made a ton of great music. I think they got fame. Well, since you picked Helmet, obviously we'll be a little more specific going forward here. You picked Helmet. I challenged you to listen to Helmet again. Helmet's Betty, and to get back into it, and or to go through it a little deeper, and that's what these album challenges are, I guess. And
yeah, and I can honestly tell you that there is 2 songs on the album that I knew. I probably have listened to this album maybe when it came out,
right?
Which actually came out in 94.
Yes.
So probably 95, 96. I probably listened to this album once. There's a popular one called Milk Toast that is on it that got played on the radio a lot.
Right.
And I'd actually sought out the Sam Hell song because of electric banjo.
I turned you on that. The electric banjo with distortion is probably as rare as it. I can't imagine there's a ton of it out there, but I may be wrong. But
no, but I think that's why I chose that is because I do like Helmet. And I'll kind of explain the caveat I have to that in a minute, but that's why I chose that one, is because while Black Keys probably would have been more of a challenge for me,
right,
to find something for me,
right,
I wanted to go back and revisit Betty because Meantime was their big album.
Sure.
Meantime was Helmet's big album. It had 2 or 3, maybe even 4 hits off of it.
Probably at least 2 solids, 3 good, and 4 that may have been gotten
in
radio
the meantime.
Play. Yeah.
In the meantime, an unsung were, you couldn't, turn on the radio in 92 without hearing those songs at some point.
Right, because I think they tried to drag them towards grunge as much as anything, but I think I guess we're going to discuss this first. We'll go that first. Really, really, really heavy precursor and or a parallel line to Tool. As
their
early stuff.
Yes,
coming up.
But I will say that in listening to Meantime, this was the same but different. It was
better.
Obviously, there's not much melody on their albums. To kind of put that lightly.
No.
But there was a different feel to Betty than there was Meantime, and I was very familiar with Meantime. I had, that album I owned, I listened to on a regular basis. But when Betty came out, I'd kind of moved on to different music at that point. But in putting this on, I did hear a little early Tool, but I will directly compare 5 different bands that immediately stood out on different versions of these songs, that's why I'm saying this as a caveat is we talked just before we got on. We didn't do too much research on the background of the album or anything like that. It's more what it means to you.
Right.
And I immediately jump into an album and I will automatically compare. That's what I do. It's not because I think one's better than the other or that I, think, oh, they're copying somebody else. I just want to get the feel of where it is. And that album was released in 94. Again, Meantime was 92, just a couple years before it.
Right.
But in 94, you had a lot of things, a lot of big things hitting around that time.
Right.
Like you said, grunge was kind of
tapering
getting to that
off,
point.
Yeah, or really in the
getting to that point of tapering off.
Yeah.
And this whole did they say what they are? Because you had new metal, rap rock, stoner rock, all kind of alternative metal. It was such a small genre of bands. Well, let me throw all the bands out and then I'll kind of relate them one at a time. But
okay.
I heard Fu Manchu in them.
Yes.
I heard Limp Bizkit in them. I heard Chevelle in them. I heard Rage Against the Machine in them. I heard Primus in them. As I'm listening to these songs, I'm like, man, were these guys just taking the sound that was at the time and making it their own? You look at the dates, and I'm almost going to have to say that a lot of these bands I just named use Helmet as reference. Like,
right.
They were later. Some of them, like the Fu Manchu songs that I kind of like and enjoy. The album came out in 2010.
Right.
They've been making albums since 95, but the stuff that was really good and that I related it to didn't come out until 2010. Limp Bizkit was 97, 99. That was, again, what do you call that? What's that genre?
Yeah, new metal, rap metal. I don't know.
Chevelle was in early 2000s.
Right.
Rage kind of was around the same time, but they weren't near as close to it as I felt as the other bands were, and the same way with Primus. But man, just listening to some of these songs, like, obviously the hit off of the album is Milquetoast, and I went back and listened to that again. I'm like, this is you could say that Chevelle purposely listened to this song to create what their album was, to create the Red and the songs that came off that. I don't remember what was the name of that album that the Chevelle had that
I don't know. I'm
had
not
the
a
Red
fan.
on it. Wonder what's next? Yeah, Wonder What's Next. And I felt like Helmet almost got cheated. Like, the music on this album is so, and I don't know if did I say this on the podcast or before, that all the songs are kind of the same but different.
Yeah.
Yes, compared to when you look at Meantime. Meantime was, you kind of knew where the songs were going. This one, like, if you listen to the song Beautiful Love.
Yeah, that's as eclectic as it gets. It's got like 12 bar blues of like
it's jazz blues at the
lounge. Yeah.
And then goes into this cacophony of mixed, distorted guitars that aren't playing on time, and I'm like,
and kick double bass, and it's
I'm like, what happened?
Yeah,
I was listening to a really good song here, and then it
tapers back into that
curved.
Yeah.
But I think that like in listening to all these songs, I think Biscuits for Smut was another really good one that I appreciated off this album.
Yeah.
And again, I may have heard once or twice at the time it came out, but going back and re-listening to it, I've discovered something about Helmet. And actually, as I started relating it to these other bands like Fu Manchu and Limp Bizkit and Chevelle, I don't like listening to an album by these bands.
Oh, like an entire album?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I really felt like by the time I got to song 5 or 6,
yeah, you got to piece them together. Yeah,
I was like, I'm done. I love this music. This music is great. This music is angry. This music is aggression. This music is
it's fun and kind of campy at times. It's different.
Fun, yep. But like one song or 2 songs, and I listened to, because I was listening to it, I went ahead and went back and listened to Meantime as well, and the same thing though. I 2 or 3 songs and I was done. Limp Bizkit, I can probably only take one Limp Bizkit song, and then I don't need another one for a couple months.
I don't know if you're in the minority in that category, but
well, same with Chevelle. I love Chevelle. Chevelle is actually, if I had to pick a band that takes the sound to the top for me, Chevelle is actually the band that takes it to the top for me. I don't think Helmet's this album was a little too weavy for me. Again, if I take one song off of it and I put it on and listen to it, I'm ready to go to the next, I'm ready to go back to AC/DC or, on to something new.
Right.
And I don't think I feel that way about other albums. The 2 I suggested to you, and we'll get to those in a few minutes, but the 2 I suggested to you are albums that I can literally start with one and go to the end and I'm done and I not feel too question marks about it.
Right.
This album really, I really had to listen to 2 or 3 songs and come back and listen to 2 or 3 songs and come back. I couldn't make it through the whole album straight.
Well, that's where it kind of ties into Tool for me, where like
I would say that about Tool too. Yeah.
You hear 1, 2 songs. I mean, and to be fair, Tool songs are probably twice, maybe 3 times as long.
Dude, there's a 2.03 on this album.
Yeah.
The longest song is what? 358.
Might be 4 minutes. I was going to say
358 or 353. Yeah.
So
yeah.
No, but I mean that aspect of, I mean, it's not something you could put on and just, put the headphones on and jam out to. And that was never the case with the band. Like a lot of bands I listen to. That's why, a few podcasts back when we did the, what albums do you listen to all the way through? There are very few for me. And I even said that on the podcast, because for me to sit and listen to an entire album of the same thing, I've fallen into that short attention span thing. I mean, I want the same but different. I want, I can go from Helmet to Pantera to Lamb of God to, Metallica to the Black Keys even, or, calm it down a little bit and come right back, to another Helmet song. That's why, like in Pandora, it skips to, songs that sound like that, and it comes back, and in every 5th or 7th song it plays a Helmet song. That's why it works for me.
No, I think through what we've done here and through our discussions, I've now realized that is, I don't want to say difference, but that's the major varying factor in what you and I feel about music. And we always preface our podcast with, hey, we love music. It's not a question mark of whether we love music. We just absorb it differently.
Absolutely.
We take it in differently. Just like you. Whoever's listening to this right now, you absorb different music differently than we do.
Sure.
And I'm realizing more that is, and I went back and looked at the other album you gave me, and I put a couple songs on, but I think it's the same way. I think if I look at that album, it would probably be the same way. It would be, I could probably get through 3 or 4 of these songs, and I'm kind of done with that. And I go the other direction. And maybe the challenge isn't working for us, or maybe it is, but you know, I'm seeing that separation now. I'm seeing that difference in what we're talking about, because when you're handing me an album, you're handing me 4 or 5 songs you like, and then other songs that you'll put on occasionally because you just want to hear something different.
Not yes, that's 80% true.
Okay, 80. That's pretty close.
I like that entire album. I like each song individually. I love that album. But as far as listening to an album straight through, I think that kind of gets, I feel that there should be a little gray area where, you know, I mean, I could put that album on and listen to it all the way through and not even blink. But that's not, like you just said, that's not how I absorb music. I prefer not to. That doesn't mean I like any song more or less than the rest of that album. It's just, that's not how I choose to listen to music, because I like variety. I don't like listening to the same band, the same album over and over and over and over and over again. I do like,
ouch.
I do. I mean, I do like,
I know, but ouch.
I mean, I do like to hear the same song. If there's a song I like, I will play it a lot. If there's an album that I like, I don't have number one, I just simply don't have enough time to sit down and ingest, you know, an hour and a half worth of music repeatedly. Like, especially the same when I'm looking for for lack of a better, I'm looking for the next fix. I'm looking for the next, what else do I want to listen to, you know, often, maybe not all the time, but I get this thing where I don't want to burn something out. I have a palm full of songs that are like unshakable. Like, if you put them on right this second, I will listen to them to the end and still get goosebumps and not even blink. And I don't have a handful of albums that I can listen to from beginning to end and get goosebumps and enjoy the whole thing when I'm, you know, I start to think about what else could I be listening to on the songs that don't hit as well as some of the other ones. This album that I gave you, Betty, is probably one of those handful that I like every song equally. Some maybe a little more than others, but there's not a song that I would skip past on this album. And much like the Black Keys album, they are different where, like, if I'm at a bonfire or something and the Black Keys are on, you could put 3 or 4 or 5 of their albums on back to back, and it would be background noise, and it would be cool, and I would enjoy it. The difference with this is I don't think it's designed to listen to in its entirety. Like, you almost have to break it up with something. Like, even at a concert, I mean, or like Beautiful Love or Sam Hill, they'll slow it down, or they'll go to a different album. I mean, I would have to look again. I'd say they probably had 7, 8 studio albums, some with different singers even, and different band members. Helmet has changed cast at times. I think, and I haven't looked recently, I think the original singer they're back with them, but I don't think the original drummer. I know the singer and the drummer had issues, why they separated for a while, and I know they got a new singer that sounded close, but to me, the type of music, the type of album that Betty is and that Helmet makes, I don't think is designed for, you know, to get in the car for a road trip and, you know, put this album in and just listen to it all the way through, and, you know, without wanting to change the channel. And that's not because the music is bad or that the album is bad or has any low spots for me, but I just don't think that this style of music is not designed that way. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit more, you know, aggression and oddity of this. Because, like you said, it's not very melodic, to say the least.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
It's offbeat and it's quirky and it's I'd say hard to follow at times.
Yeah, it is, and that's a good way. That was one of the next points I was going to make, and probably the last point I probably need to make on it at this point. But it was like, when I talked about that beautiful love song, the beginning of it is traditional, standard
jazz.
music. But when you
Yeah.
get to the end of it, it's like can't even follow the drum beat, and I like it. It still sounds good, but. And speaking of drums, man, that snare is it drives me nuts. I love it and I hate it at the same time.
That echoed snare.
It's turned off. I mean, it's just basically a real high pitched tom at that point. But,
yeah.
It's different. It's completely different. And so I don't think that I would certainly put any of songs on this album on any list that I would be listening to. Like if I was going to create a rock list, this would be on it. Any of these songs I could put on it. And, I actually peeked just to see what they're listed for, and they're listed as post-hardcore. They also are sometimes listed as avant-garde metal, which I honestly have never heard before. But in both of those iterations that I talked about, none of the bands that I mentioned that I felt they were akin to or took their lead and kind of, took their sound, none of them are on either one of those lists. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if it was just timing, if it's really just timing, if I'd look later on, if there's a different genre for that time frame or something that Chevelle would fit into, something that where Limp Bizkit and Fu Manchu all fit into. But I really feel like they were the start of a sound that people took on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think they were. The only term I've ever been able to come up with is underground influential. Like,
yeah, good word.
Like
for
they
it.
weren't super huge. They got a little bit of radio play with Meantime, and I think a lot of people kind of took pieces of them and they quickly deteriorated. I think infighting in the band and so on and so forth. I think if they would have stayed together, or if whatever you want to call it, relationships had been better, I think they may have gone further, maybe a little higher, but I think they're a great band for people to take things from that, like, I know we always beat this horse, but Greta Van Fleet, you kind of know where their influences are. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's not much of a surprise.
Yeah.
That you can call Led Zeppelin one of their influences. Okay, so
their influence.
Well, anyway.
Like, period.
Well, yes, but okay, so you know what I'm talking about. It's not much of a secret. Well,
yeah.
I think a lot of bands, like you mentioned, half a dozen plus Tool, they take that offbeat, they take that whatever I forget, I don't even know what you said, the industrialized metal or whatever.
They called it either post-metal or avant-garde metal.
Avant-garde, post-apocalyptic, whatever, I don't care. I mean, they weren't hugely in the limelight. So
right.
I think it was a little bit easier to borrow some of the oddities that they, I wouldn't say pioneered, because I mean everything has some influence to it.
But what was before them that sounded like that? Not much.
Well, I know that, but I mean, so they more than less pioneered, because Tool started, I think their first EP was 92.
That could be. That's a good point.
So I mean, it's right there. I mean, Meantime and even their first release had to be right there. So I mean, there may, and who knows, there may be some sort of connection. It may be Maynard's illegitimate brother or something. Who knows?
93 was Undertow for Tool, by the way.
Yeah, but what was Opiate? They had an
92, I think.
EP, yeah, that was before that, I think.
89 to 92. They don't say when was it. Let me see when it was actually released. Opiate was 92. They actually had another EP just before it, 72826 was
Wow.
91, but same time frame. So yeah,
I mean, so roughly you could say pioneers of that offbeat, 5/8 rhythm and so on and so forth. I think but Tool wasn't like that
no,
exclusively in the beginning, in their early stuff.
but and their guitar sounds are way different.
Right. No doubt. But I mean, as far as the rhythm and things of that nature, I mean, Helmet has pioneered, I hate that word, but they basically started kind of that what are they movement, like how do you characterize Tool? How do you characterize Helmet? How do you put these bands, what'd we say, southwestern metal or whatever, the
I'm not even going there.
Rock
Not even
genres,
not even
subgenres.
going there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think at some point in time we may need to revisit that whole idea of genres, because there's so many. Especially, I mean, in the 60s and 70s, it was they were black and white, and as you started moving into the 80s, it really started getting a little more diverse. And by between 90s and 2010, there's probably 30 different subgenres of rock and metal that you can talk about. And,
right.
One of the comments we got from somebody listening to us was, we did this "what is rock" thing, and they thought, hey, you guys need to do a "what is metal" thing. I'm like, that's a really good point, because I've seen a lot of labeling of bands. Like, would you consider Van Halen metal?
Well, they consider the Eagles rock, so what are you going to do?
Oh, stop. Just cut your mic off again.
We proved it.
Well, I think I've said enough about Helmet, and I think we've talked about it enough. I think
sure.
It was really a good re-listen, I guess. A lot of it was fresh to me. But it was a good listen for me on the album, because I've forgotten how much I like that type of music.
Right.
I like, I put me back into listening to Fu Manchu and Chevelle and stuff again that I hadn't really had on in quite a while. But again, it would definitely be something that I would take one from each and put them into a mix.
Sure.
I certainly couldn't listen to this album straight through again and stuff.
Right.
But what I gave you was one's a concept album. The other one is an album that I tagged onto years before a release of their actual hit album. And then when their hit album came out, everybody wanted to go back and listen to this. But the first one I picked was
not everybody.
The Black Parade. Huh?
I said not everybody.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, okay. A lot of people. The one I picked was Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, was the concept album, and it's kind of a story album. And then I also picked Kerplunk by Green Day, which was, they actually released a cassette first that had two of their really early EPs on it, and then they released a CD that's actually was, I don't remember what the name of the it wasn't on Lookout, was it? Records?
I don't know.
Anyways, but they actually released a CD just before they released their 94 Dookie, which, just blew the charts away at that point. Which I still think Kerplunk is a better album. I think Kerplunk is more epitomizes what Green Day were in the past and what I wish they would have stayed in. Interestingly enough, we picked these albums, two albums. I picked two albums for you. You picked one of the two. I picked the other one. Both of them were almost the same time frame. The Green Day was 92. The Helmet was 94. I think. What was the Black Keys when it was like?
Probably right there, 98, 99 maybe.
And then the Black Parade was early 2000s, mid 2000s, something like that.
Strange how that kind of, yeah.
But so you chose Kerplunk. It's again, it was kind of a / independent release for Reprise Records was what it was. Actually, it was with Lookout first, and then they were re-released on Reprise. But so What's your initial thing?
My initial with things like this is to, because we're music snobs, I have to roll my eyes because I've never been a Green Day fan. I know like the entire thing was a half hour long. I mean, the whole album, there's 16 songs and it was like 40 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I knew what it was. I'd heard most of it before, because A, through you, and B, through you can't not hear Green Day ever.
Yeah.
It's a blueprint, or it's a prototype. They're the 90s Ramones. I don't know how else to put it.
That's a good way of putting it. I can see that.
They're literally three guys that, I mean, they're 2-minute songs, 3-minute songs, 3 chords, jamming out, and that's it. The only thing, I mean, they had a couple, they never technically released a single. Most have heard "Welcome to Paradise" is the one.
Yeah, it's a different version on this than it is on Dookie, though.
I know, but I mean that's what
Yes.
I mean. You've heard the song anyway,
Yep.
but they never technically released, and they did a cover on the CD version of the Who's "My Generation" that you can't unhear. Is the only way I know how to put that. I like punk. I like punk music. I like that fast. I like that, bag over the head, punch in the face, get in, get out, give me what I need, bounce around, mosh, slam dance, whatever you want to call it, get a pit going, and I like it. His voice has always been my deterrent. I've never liked Billy Joe Armstrong's voice at all. I mean, I think it's a Les Claypool thing. You either love it or hate it. It either fits or it doesn't. I don't think it fits the punk. I don't know.
Can you put your finger on why? Just out of curiosity.
On why I don't like his voice?
Yeah. What about his voice is it that
the pitch? It's just something about it. It's like, I don't know. It's one of those things that, for me, it's the inexplicable thing. Like, you either like it or you don't. You know what I mean? Like, if you hear something and you like it, you'll dig deeper, you find it. I've heard them. I never really cared for them, so it was hard to dig deep, especially in a genre that I love. I mean, I love punk. I love the rawness of it. I love and this album has that. To be fair, this album is raw. I mean, bare skin, raw, hardcore punk. It really is what I think it came at a place where it fell on deaf ears, though. And 91, we all know, we've talked about this ad nauseum, the Black Album, the end of grunge, the beginning of, that was all going away and it was tapering off. And this album fell on deaf ears. It was too soon. We talk about the timing thing. It wasn't the right album at the right time. Their next album, Dookie, is watered down punk, radio friendly, and it fit. It was a couple of years later, 3 years later, or whatever, and
94 was when it was released.
And it exploded because it found that gap and it found the chink in the armor. And I think this album doesn't get nearly enough credit for, like you said, you wish they would have stayed on this course, and so do I.
Yeah, way beyond even if you teak and just sit down and listen to the two different versions of Welcome to Paradise.
Yeah.
From this and from the Dookie album, there is a there's a heart.
Horrible discredit to the second one.
There is a heart in the one on Kerplunk.
Yes,
and there
I
is
agree.
money in the one on Dookie.
Yes,
and that's the best way I can explain it.
That's actually brilliant, and I think that describes these albums. There is heart, raw aggression and heart in this album, and there is money in that second one, and the next album. I don't know if second or third, if what it would be considered, but it literally hurts to hear the difference.
It does,
and
that's a great way of putting it.
And I never liked Green Day because of Dookie, and I can tolerate them because of Kerplunk.
Yeah, and
I mean, to be fair, because I'm not a huge fan. I stated that earlier, but this is very, very, very much better than the radio garbage that they just flood, still to this minute flood. I mean, and song.
Are you, wait a minute. Are you telling me you don't like Time of Our Life?
Yeah, exactly. You beat me to it. That
I know.
If you can turn on a radio station, any variety other than say country or hip hop, if you can turn on a radio station to this day and not hear that at some point in your day, that I would call you a liar, because that song is I mean, I'm sure it has probably made them that made them. I mean, I know we've talked about it in the past, and I'm not gonna give them that much credit for it. But
Basket Case was a pretty big song, though, too. I mean,
oh, absolutely. No, they've made that the Dookie album. I mean, let's face it. I mean, it put them on the map and kept them on the map. It made them
Rolling Stone has it at 193 on the 500 greatest albums of all time.
It literally made Green Day a household name.
Yeah.
Period.
It's very interesting that I want to really touch on that point of being raw and kind of who they changed into. I have that as I don't want to say criteria, but I think the bands that I appreciate have those albums.
Yes.
If you look at Bleach by Nirvana, if you look at Too Fast for Love by Motley Crue,
yes.
If you look at Kerplunk by Green Day, those are what I wanted those bands to be. I think Motley Crue went the right direction. I think Nirvana, you go either way. That was another money album for their second one.
Sure.
Kerplunk, they are miles different. I mean,
yes,
you can see comparisons because it's a 3-piece and it's punk rock, but just their feel and sound between those two albums is completely different. But I think I have an affinity for those types of albums. If you're going to ask me which Motley Crue album I want to listen to, it's going to be Too Fast for Love.
Yeah.
If you ask me which Nirvana album I want to listen to, I want to listen to Bleach.
Sure.
I don't want the big ones. So
I went to listen to none of those three that in your conversation do I want to listen to.
That's why we do an album challenge.
No, I know that. I'm in that same vein of thinking, though. I appreciate it. It's irritating to me, and when we talked about the Black Keys album early, and the later stuff is really good, but it's too polished. It's too. It gets too produced when it's 2 guys or 3 guys in their basement, in their apartment, in a rat hole studio, bleeding onto the amps. It matters. And when somebody picks up that hint, when they can smell blood in the water, for lack of a better pun, they take that and run. And let's be honest, if you're 19, 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old, and says, hey man, Boston made a song about it, rock and roll band, guy shows up with a contract and, hey, you guys can be millionaires and literally everybody on the planet will hear your songs, but you just have to
clean it up.
And there it goes.
Make it sound better.
Because
make it so somebody can sing it.
When executives, yeah, exactly. Make sure it can be it's Muzak ready. So when executives say, "Hey, man, we're going to introduce punk to the masses," you just have to take the rough edges off. That's when I lose contact with it.
So shortly, and when I say shortly, let me actually see how short it was. Give me just a second, because I want to see. I want to say So Kerplunk was released on CD on original release December of '91, CD of January of '92.
Right.
Nevermind was released September of '91. Did they have to change because of what Nirvana did?
Oh,
did they?
No.
Well,
No.
but think about it. Seriously, think about it. It Nirvana changed whatever if you don't like, you either like grunge or you don't. Nirvana changed the entire sway of music at that point.
Sure.
And that was released literally, a couple months before this album came out. It took off. I mean, it was an instant hit. So did we lose punk coming on a rise because of that album? Now, you can always say that, Bleach was already out. Didn't you say Outshine come out before Nevermind? Was it Outshine that came out before them? One of their albums, one of the why am I blanking? Soundgarden albums come out before them, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Super Unknown.
Yeah, I think that was you're right. I think that might have been the one.
But that was like 92. They had what's the one with Jesus? Oh man.
So Louder Than Love was 89. Bad Motor Finger was 91. Bad Motor
Finger, yes.
Yes. But that was 91. October of 91. It literally came out a month after Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yes, perfect example though. Listen to Bad Motor Finger and listen to Super Unknown and talk about rawness and polish.
Yeah. And Louder Than Love.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever listened through that, but that's really raw.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
yes, radio.
I'm going to go on a tangent. I'm going to go on a really big tangent. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You ready? Here we go. Is that what's missing from bands today?
Yes.
Are they?
You don't have to go any further. Yes.
Well, I know, but I'm going to, because that's what I like to do. That's why I have a podcast. Are they not getting the playing to 15 people on your first show, releasing an album that you had to sell your car to produce?
Yes.
Are they missing that
moment
of build-up? Because, you're not a Green Day fan, but as you said...
No, absolutely. Credit
where
it's due. Sure.
Green Day played the other night at New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Okay. 2019, New Year's Eve.
Right.
Green Day played in front of...
Right, it was a reunion show, right? That was...
kind of.
Yeah.
But, that's 2019. Their first album, Kerplunk, well, technically the one before it was 89, but 91.
Right.
Is that why bands aren't sticking around? Because you don't feel like they paid their dues?
Absolutely.
But are we, there's a million different things that could be because why rock isn't, popular and stuff as it used to be. And obviously this might be a small part of it, but how big of a part do you think that is?
No.
Do people even care about that anymore?
Yeah, we've talked about this too. We're at a point where people's attention span, they don't have time. Yeah. They don't have time to pay their dues because nobody's listening.
That's true.
Nobody's listening. Nobody goes to clubs anymore. Nobody goes to. I mean, the place I went to see bands, local 662 in St. Pete, closed up. It's done. It was like maybe 500 people if the fire marshal didn't show up. And oh my God, as my witness, I saw bands in that place that. I don't know how the roof didn't cave in.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was like 40 of us in there.
Dude, as much as I hate to dredge up my past and put it out in the front, but the venue we played where we opened, my local band opened for 7 Mary 3, was small in comparison.
Yeah.
And there were national acts in there all the time.
Yeah.
It like 5 years after we stopped playing, it was closed.
You want me to
completely closed.
When we put a bow on it?
Sure.
I saw Helmet and Static X in that same building.
There you go.
Yeah.
And 7 Mary 3 and Pearl Jam played there.
Right.
You know, bands that what's the other one we opened for? Nonpoint played there.
Yeah.
You know, bands that sold millions of albums played in this club that probably I don't know, you could probably get 2,000 in there at the most.
I think I'd say 1,500 tops.
Okay. And regardless,
yeah.
You know, that's a small venue, but every time we went in there, no matter who it was, if it was local bands or if it was a national band, it was packed. And I'm not saying anything about the band I was in, but when we opened for 7 Mary 3, we were the first band of 3. Yeah. And there were still 400 or 500 people standing out there just to see a local band. Nobody does that anymore. I mean, if you do, call me a liar. Write into us, musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com, and tell us we're liars. You know, tell us that you go to shows. I want to hear this. I want to know where it is.
Sure.
I want to promote that because I want people to start doing that again.
Yeah, there's still places out there. I mean, the Pegasus Lounge. We were supposed to go to a show. The Brass Mug, DRI, Dirty Rotten Imbeciles from the skate punk from the 80s was supposed to play the Brass Mug, which
my band played at one point.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying, and it might be a 500.
Man, I don't know. That might be pushing it. 300 might be pushing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a bar. It's basically a bar, and I mean that the level of that, I know it's still happening. There are still kids playing bands, but are those kids paying their dues, working their way up, like you said, sleeping in their car and or selling their car for that extra hour of studio time to produce an EP when it can be digitally released and an 8-year-old can make $26 million on YouTube? It's kind of hard to want to pay your dues when you don't have to anymore.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't really have to.
Yeah, and I do believe that takes all the coolness out of it. It takes all the rock and roll out of it. So when we say rock is dead, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
like that raw feel, that feeling of untapped aggression and unpolished, unproduced, unoverproduced feel. You know, that the artists that we listen to, that we talk about, that we bring up, that we critique their albums had, because they came out, believe this, 30 years ago or more now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, 2000 was 20 years ago already.
Yeah, and we talk about, you know, we mostly talk about rock. That's what we listen to, and that's what we've got our history in for the most part. But that's why we talk about rock being dead. That's for our feelings are on it, is we want to talk about that because that's what's akin to us. But there's other genres that are kind of falling on the wayside too, or getting absorbed. I mean, I actually sent you a message so I wouldn't forget that we were going to try and do something on another upcoming podcast that is more related to folk rock or folk music in general. And I want to start kind of, you know, investigating other genres and stuff. But I think that's why rock is falling off, is because it's getting absorbed in everything else. And like you said, the attention span is still kind of one of the biggest factors of it. So, and
I've also said that the further away you get from ground zero, the more watered down it gets. I mean, most definitely. From an epicenter, once something big hits and it gets copied, it gets recopied, it gets, you know, and it definitely loses the effect. I mean, it's still rippling, but I mean, you know, they're smaller, way smaller, and a lot closer together than they are when it first hit, as far as rock and roll goes, and I'll swear to that too.
So I think it kind of ties us up on Kerplunk as well. This is going to come out, as long as everything works right, as episode 49. We have our 50th episode coming up. We talked about it, but I wanted to kind of tease it at this point. It would be cliche to do a top 50, but we're going to do it anyways. Sort of.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's our show, so
Yeah, is that right? Exactly. So I think I'm going to tease it. We're going to do 50 things about music. Top 50 things about music for us. Might be a long show, might be a short show. It could be just mentioning something and kind of moving on, but we'll see. But I think that what we're talking about here is one of those things that kind of fits into that list of me liking albums that are really rough first albums for bands. And I can tell you right now that that's already on my list because of the three I named. I named Kerplunk and Bleach and Too Fast for Love. Those albums feel better to me than everything they do after it, and maybe it's because it's so rough and unpolished and stuff. But that's kind of what we're gonna do with 50 at this point, and it'll be related to music, most of them.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's all. I mean, sorry, not sorry. Most of my, not say all of my life is pretty much based around music in some way or form or fashion, anyway. So
same here, and I think that the last thing I'll mention is we did actually set up a Patreon for people to help us kind of at this point. We do this for fun. We do this because we love to talk about music. As you said, it's been a big part of both of our lives for a long time. But I did start a Patreon. It's patreon.com/musicmusing. No big secret there. There's a couple tiers you can join up with. The lowest one is just basically to help us with paying for the online services and kind of what we do. The other ones are pretty interesting. I'll let you guys check them out. They might give you a little more voice in the podcast at this point. But I just want to touch on that real quick before we signed off and let everybody kind of get teased with the 50.
Absolutely. And don't forget the MusicMusingFeedback at gmail.com. So
yep. Reach out to us. Any parting shot? Can I throw a parting shot off the album that I really wanted your opinion on?
Sure.
Okay. Dominating Love Slave. Do you remember that song?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, this whole experience was punk rock.
Yeah.
I think if you listen to the Sex Pistols, if you listen to the Ramones, if you listen to anything of that nature, there's always songs that are curveballs by nature.
But it feels like they're having fun.
Yes.
And I get to that song and I will reach up to skip it because I know what it is. I've listened to it so many times. But I will leave it on because I'm like, these guys are having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's missing off Dookie, is I don't feel any fun on that album.
I would have to agree. I mean, that's about as simple as they could put it. I mean, to me, again, not having listened to it as to the extent you have, obviously, I got through it. I mean, to me, it was exciting, but to me, it's still. Yeah. I mean, it's still punk rock. It doesn't send me into a tizzy like it used to, I guess.
Unfortunately. Well, go make your list because you got 50 to come up with. We'll probably be releasing that towards the end of the month, maybe, if we get around to it. But I'm actually starting on my list at this point. So, but regardless, I enjoyed the albums. Maybe we'll do for the next album challenge. We'll throw the other two that we didn't pick out and force ourselves to suck it up or something.
Nah, that's all right. I don't ever.
Two different ones.
No, I don't ever hate. I mean, I don't ever hate the experience. I mean,
same here.
Even Chinese Democracy was an experience.
I'm gonna mark the recording on that one.
Well, I didn't say it was a good experience. I said it was an experience.
Good point.
But no, I don't ever hate hearing music or some different or having, if someone asked me to listen to something and have an opinion on it, I mean, that's fine. I'm most certainly happy to do that. Just my opinion might not be what everybody wants to hear.
Funny. Cool. Well, we'll catch up to you in the next couple weeks then, brother.
Absolutely. I'm be here.
Okay, have a go, man.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
We want to talk to you about music, so reach out to us at musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com.
You can also find us on most social media sites by searching Music Musing or George or Craig Seibert, Sybert.
And you can also find us on Twitter as MusicMusing_ as well.
Thank you for listening to this Music Musing podcast.